Hey, good morning. It is time for coffee talk. Getting a bit of a late start this morning because I chased my dog all morning who got out of the fence. Good job, dog. It's actually worse than that because she got out last night and then I got her back and then she got out this morning. So 2 months of this dog hanging out in the backyard, no problem. I got a fence. All of a sudden she has decided it is time to go down by the water and irritate the neighbors. So that was a lot of fun. All right, so we're getting a late start. What are we going to talk about today? We'll dive into the missions as always, take a quick look at the specials. Not much going on right there. We're going to discuss the calling of the banners. It looks like there is another player / content provider meeting going to happen at Minsk. Those are always, I was going to say interesting, but I think useless comes to mind. Anyway, we'll discuss that. We're going to talk a little bit about the 268 V4, the Tier 10 ridiculous Russian TD that came out. A little bit about tank rewards, what's going on with that. Something strange is afoot with chat bans. Very odd if you've been tracking. And we'll finish up with a little discussion about Alpine, Tiger, and preferential tanks. Let's get started. Alrighty, for the specials in the store, you're really just looking at the Alpine Tiger right now. More on that a little while later. And then Sabaton, the Primo Victoria, is still for sale. Looks like 7 days. So that is still going on as well. And then the standard laundry list. So not a whole lot on specials. Let's see what the missions are doing. All right, not much going on mission-wise right now, actually. Chinese heavies are on track. That means you can, let's see if we can get the selection here. There they are. Actually, that's not correct. Or that's not all of them, actually. Hold on, I'll get there. Here we go. There you are. So that line, it goes up to the WZ 111 5A and the 113. Remember, it splits off at the WZ 111 1-4. So quite a few tanks there for the on-track if you would like to go up that line. That's actually a pretty good heavy line, so not a bad on-track selection right there. Remember, you don't get the gold for this one. If you have the premium, that's the little prize. You get the silver. You can see it's listed right there. I would get 320,000 silver, but it would take me 250,000 experience to do that. There is a garage slot involved as well. Although there are some of these credit boosters, they're only 25%, which is chintzy. All right, on to the missions. There is a reward for commitment for ranked battles. This is not something I'm doing. Down below, let me know how you're doing with ranked battles. I've ignored it this time once again. Played about 3-4 games and just realized what a grindy disaster it is and decided to get out of that. If you wanted a worse meta than pubs, if you were a high-level player and you wanted a worse meta than pubs already were, I recommend you play ranked battles as everybody camps and hides behind each other and attempts to be #1. And maybe that's just how it is. There are the Ace Mastery. They got 2 versions of that going on. Remember, they overlap. And then Tank Rewards is ongoing. We'll talk a little bit about that later. That's top 3 for tier 4s through 8s, divided into 3 sections. And the only other missions going on are the standard Hunt the Sheriff, which I haven't seen one of these guys in I don't know how long. You can see I've only ever done it once, and goodness knows how long that's been tracking. And then the Lunar New Year, which is kind of interesting, actually. On this one, if you get Lucky, Tank Sniper, High Caliber, or Raider, then you're going to get a multiplier for experience and crew, which is... that's really bad. You know what I mean? The 1, 2, 3, 4 different... oh, there's a bigger list. No, that is the list. So if you get one of these badges, which seems relatively random, to be quite honest, you get a little bit of a bonus multiplier. So I don't even know why you would... It's part of the Chinese New Year carnival thing that they listed, but I don't know. That's very strange. All right, forgot to mention, I've actually got some Starbucks coffee, you know, expensive coffee, but it's the kind that you actually percolate yourself, and it's actually pretty nice. But I've got the Fruity Cup as well. Going with the Fruity Cup this morning. All right, the calling of the banners. It looks like they have brought in some contributors. This is from the Daily Bounce with Harkonnen over there. It looks like he is in Minsk. Starting on the 16th, going to the 18th. Today's the 18th, so it should be the last day of whatever they're discussing. You can probably find out all kinds of information pretty soon as they come back and start writing about it. I haven't seen anything on the various blogs so far about anything that may or may not have been said. But let's just talk about how this has gone in the past. What will happen more than likely is they're going to all meet and they'll have a kumbaya, and that's all good. You know, that's what companies do. They bring in people that are interested in their product and they do meet and greets and all that. That's not scoffing that. That's how it goes. And that's a good thing. But what's probably going to happen here is after this is all done, there'll be a video put out by Wargaming, and it will show a bunch of happy players, and they'll be chatting and laughing, and then they'll throw maybe one or two serious questions in there that they will put into the video that will have some kind of nebulous answer that doesn't really answer the question. And then there'll be interspersed amongst this a bunch of ridiculous questions, things that are just funny or silly or whatever, and everyone will get a big laugh. And basically at the end of this video, you'll have learned more or less nothing than you already know. I have not seen in the past where Wargaming has actually listened to anything substantive that the players brought up in these things. Especially the North American players, the ones that have happened in North America, which I get because that's just North America. We're what, 3-4% of their customer base, so not a big deal really to them. This will be interesting because it's in Minsk, so maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I am. And I'm not saying the players drive everything and they should listen to a bunch of content creators for the direction of their game necessarily. Not 100%. But I will say there is definitely room for them to listen some percent. Because what it really, at this point, is 0%. Or maybe it's 0.5. I don't know. But that's kind of what I expect. So I have optimistically pessimistic or pessimistically optimistic. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Again, no information. Hopefully I've got some stuff for you next week on that. You can read it as well as I can on the Daily Bounce or status report or whatever the other one is. What's the other one called here? Armored Patrol. Those are the three main ones. There's probably more out there, obviously, that you guys know about. As a matter of fact, if there are any more good World of Tanks blogs or information sites that you guys know and use, drop it down on the comments down there and spread the love. I could use a few more as well, and I'm sure everybody else would be interested in it. So let's see what comes out of Minsk. I'm sure they're going to talk a lot about the HD maps and the upgrades. They're going to talk probably quite a bit about balance, or at least they're going to get hammered a lot about balance. The new tanks, the new Russian tanks, all that kind of stuff. What I'd really like them to talk a lot about is gold rounds and balancing for gold, but we'll see. Maybe some really good stuff will come out of that, but you know, Wargaming's, all their eggs are in the HD basket right now. So it was interesting to me that they're even having this discussion while they're so busy trying to push out 1.0, because I don't know what they have to gain right now about discussing game balance and things with players when they're completely redesigning the maps. Now I get it, ostensibly the maps are going to be more or less the same, but they can't help but have some different play changes on them. Okay, gameplay changes just because of they've made little various changes. So I'm unsure what they get out of discussing balance and maps and things like that right before they push out a whole new change that may change the whole idea of the game. So that was an interesting bit of timing for me. All right, let's move on. All right, I mentioned tank rewards when we looked at the missions, and this is the last month, by the way, guys. There's 11 days left. This is an NA thing, as far as I can tell, NA only, I'm pretty sure. And it's been a really great deal, and I do appreciate the North American guys doing this. There's a note right here that says it's going on hiatus at the end of February, and we hope to continue offering missions and great rewards again in the near future. Also remember that their office is closing down, the California office, with about 100 layoffs. And they're moving some of those jobs to various other offices in North America. Unknown what that means, if it has any deeper meaning other than a corporation trying to save some money. California is ridiculously expensive to run a company in. So maybe it's just a situation of California running off another lucrative business. I mean, yeah, it's 100 people, so it's not really burning down the state as far as making lots of money for the state and all that. But still, maybe just running away from those high taxes and that kind of thing. Or it could be something deeper, or just a contraction because the game is slipping a little bit in North America. either way, I don't think the sky's falling as far as that goes. But I think one of the repercussions of that is that Tank Rewards is, at least for the near future, going away. And that's too bad. Seems to me like if you saw this move coming, you could have set up 2 or 3, 4 months on autopilot with Tank Rewards. Just make the missions exactly the same for the exact same amount of time for 2, 3, 4 months out into the future. But that, for whatever reason, they decided not to do that. So just be aware, we're down to 11 days, at least for now, on the last one. All right, so chat bans. Chat bans. Something strange is afoot in NA and potentially EU, from what I can tell looking around. So last week there was a lot of chatter on the forums about people getting hammered with chat bans, anywhere from 24 hours to days to months, whatever the different stepping stones are for the various chat bans. And they all seem to happen more or less in a big clump. So no information actually from Wargaming. Obviously their EULA states you don't say yada yada in chat, bad words, racist stuff, attacking people, all that kind of thing. And that's always been there, but it's never been very evenly handed out or monitored. And people got chat bans in the past, but not in big clumps like this. So it makes you wonder exactly what's going on. The other odd thing about this is it's not been picked up by any of the blogs. No one's discussing it, other than, from what I can tell, in North America forum. Now, it may just be a case of a bunch of people being naughty all at once and they got chat banned. So it happens, and it's been happening the whole time the game's been going on. But this seems like something more. So I have to wonder if it's a automated system now that they put in there where it just scans the chat itself, and if it sees the appropriate word or sequence of words or something, then it automatically bans them, or it automatically sends a report to somebody who takes a look at it. I would find that kind of interesting if they were closing down an office, that they're actually getting into a more restrictive and time-intensive effort to police the chat. So that seems a little bit odd to me. I suppose the other possibility is that there's some rogue element of players out there doing the automated report thing in game and just mass attacking people they don't like, but that seems very conspiracy theory-ish to me, so that doesn't seem like a very likely thing either. I'm leaning towards the automated thing, or at least a stricter, being more strict with the chat issue itself by the employees at Wargaming. But either way, there's been a lot more chat bans handed out, and I'll be quite honest, I fully expected myself to get one, and that may still be in the pipe. Maybe they're going down the alphabet, or they have a big backlog they're working through. There's different possibilities, but the facts are that a lot more people in about the last week or so have eaten a chat ban than have in a long time. So this is kind of an interesting development. I'll watch this as we go. Could be much ado about nothing, but it's definitely above the noise level at this point. You know, the whole chat ban and being bad and getting banned and everything has always been sort of below the noise level with Wargaming, but this is a nice spike up above that noise level. So I'm not really sure what's going on. Anybody had any other information, drop it down in the comments down there, and we'll see if we can piece together what is going on here. All right, the Alpine Tiger, once again under the heading of odd timing. Remember, I reported a few weeks ago that there was a discussion from Wargaming about wanting to redo the preferential tanks. There was no information on what that meant, whether it was to make them up to tier 10 or remove them, whatever they were planning on doing wasn't really talked about in that article. All they basically said was it was amongst the other laundry list of things they wanted to do this year. They were going to look at preferentials. So along comes the Alpine Tiger sneaking through the woods and the grass, and it is basically from the Chinese server. Now, we've had a lot of discussions in NA about things like enemy tanks and Warhammer tanks and things like that for the PC version of World of Tanks. And in general, there's a lot of people against that. Now, there's plenty of people for that kind of thing as well. This is just a reskin of a WZ-111 from the Chinese server. It's hard to really see right here, but it's got this kind of big applique piece of metal tiger guy on the side right here. In-game, it looks very chromish. If you've seen one in-game, you've probably seen one by now. There are some people who have bought them. And it's really just a straight reskin. There's no different statistics for this on the NA server. It has different statistics on the Chinese server. I think it makes a bunch more gold, but that's the Wild West out there. They do whatever they want on the Chinese server. For NA, essentially you're just buying a WZ with a different skin, and that's more or less fine as far as I'm concerned. Not that not that you need me saying it's fine to buy anything at all. But personally, in my opinion, I'm not that bothered by a bunch of reskins and being sold. Frankly, if you wanted to take the low and sell it in 52 different flavors, I guess I don't really care. And I don't want pink and psychedelic and rainbow stuff running around, but that's my problem. They have looked at that, and it goes with the paint where you can actually turn off the non-historic paint. So that's all fine. Good on them. Giving people choices, that's the way you do it, right? They give people choices to have that stuff, and then they give you choices to not deal with it. And I like that. That's good. My point about this, what's odd on the timing, is that this is another preferential tank. And they're talking about changing preferential tanks. So you're going to bring in a preferential tank and then sell it, and then who knows what you're going to do to it in the next few months to, you know, a little less than a year. I just found that timing a little bit odd. Not in the context of selling and making money. Okay, Chinese New Year, Alpine Tiger, okay, it's all kind of related and coming together as far as that goes, but I just found it a little bit odd that with the preferential thing being up in the air, now we're pushing some more preferential tanks. To be quite honest, I haven't looked deeply into the shop. Let's do that actually right now, because my question then becomes, stream of consciousness, do we actually have preferential tanks still in the shop? I think we do. Some of you probably already know the answer to this. Let's go to the tier. Yes, we do. So the 34-3, the 112, the IS-6, plenty of them. Lots of preferential tanks. All right, so those are still being sold. And maybe the timing as far as those go is now becoming in question in my mind as well. You're continuing to talk about we're going to do something with preferential tanks, but we continue to sell them hot and heavy. This is where you get a lot of people then rushing in and yelling and screaming about bait and switch. All right, speaking of tanks, let's move on to the 268 V4. All right, let's talk about the 268 version 4, which is getting a lot of hate. Hopefully they're talking about this thing at Minsk. All right, is this thing dominating the battlefield and everybody's driving it at tier 10? No. Is it completely unbalancing the game and destroying gameplay? No. Is it a ridiculous vehicle? Yes. Yes, it is. And this is what's interesting about the stats and the way they balance their tanks and their disconnect on what their numbers mean and how it actually plays out in gameplay. Because if you looked at this tank just via the stats, you would not come to any kind of conclusion that it's a ridiculous tank. You look at it and go, well, its average damage is on the low side, and I'm comparing it to kind of the assault TD ideas, which is what it's supposed to be, right? The JPZ, the WZ 113, the Badger, the 268, the 110E3. These are the guys without turrets, right? Sort of quote unquote meant to push in. They're not the glass cannons or the big armored assault kind of TDs. And they have a certain play style in cities, on open maps, whatever it is. They kind of get up in your face and attack. Okay, yes, you can sit back and camp all day, but that's not really the idea of these tanks. But you look at it, you go, yeah, 650, it's Penn. Penn's pretty darn high, actually. It's up there. Not as good as the 268, but definitely in the ballpark, and you throw gold on it, and it's going to go through nearly anything. Rate of fire is relatively high. The Badger's an outlier, much smaller gun with the 480 average damage. So a little bit different idea on the Badger than the rest of these guys. These guys are all carrying the big stick. The 268, though, is carrying the slightly smaller stick, and that's important. We'll get to that. Reload time is right in there with the rest. Obviously, Badger outlier. Bad kind of depression, okay elevation. Gun traverse limits 12 degrees is at the top end, and that's actually very nice for these kind of tanks. That's important, right? So now there's a stat that matters when I'm driving a assault TD in a city or coming around corners, which is where a lot of this game is played. Whether it's coming around the corner of a rock, or I'm trying to chase somebody, or I'm in a city trying to move around corners as an assault TD. The Badger's fantastic at that because it can basically kind of look off to the side as it's coming around corners, and it's hard to get away from the Badger when it's got that much gun traverse. So that's an important number. Aiming time is decent. It's actually pretty low. Quite frankly, it aims pretty quickly, but its dispersion is not great. Excuse me. And the average damage is actually at the low end. So you take all those numbers into account. You go, well, it's not that big a deal. But then we get down here and we look at engine power. All right, consider that consider that the German tank, this massive JPZ, has a 1200 horsepower engine, which with that decade's technology would have been a relatively large engine. This is a little bit later, so maybe we can account for a slightly smaller engine, but it's in a much smaller chassis, and not too many years later is packing a 1500 horsepower engine, which gives it 55 kilometers an hour forward. And for some bizarre reason, they gave it 22 in reverse, which is fully 6 more than the closest guy. It surprised me actually that the WZ had 16. And as a matter of fact, when I played the WZ and I went up that line, I was impressed by the reverse speed, because that is another number in the way that World of Tanks is played that's incredibly important for a TD. Remember, they hammered the Hellcat's reverse speed because of its ability to get forward, shoot, and back out before being shot back at. That's what TDs do: pulling out, shooting, getting back, going around corners, coming back. When you're that fast backwards, that is a huge advantage for this kind of tank. And then you start to add in its other advantages. It's got that good azimuth on the gun traverse. And now we get down to the armor. Here on survivability, 260 millimeters, 100 on the side. It's absolutely insane. Now, it's not Badger insane, but the Badger doesn't buzz around at 55 kilometers an hour, does it? The Badger also doesn't reverse. Where's the mobility? At 22. It reverses at 12. I was in a battle. I was in my 705. It was Ruenberg, and I was at the standard heavy corner, excuse me, facing one of these 268s. Granted, tier 9 heavy against a tier 10 TD. I should have trouble. Got it. Side scraped him a couple times. He tracked me, did some good work. Baited a shot and was not tracked this time, and I started to try to go around him. So as I start chugging forward, he's backing at 22 kilometers an hour, and I'm not doing much more forward. By the time I get up to speed, I can hit 40, but minus the 22, and I'm coming at him at 18. He'd already kept some standoff. He's able to keep on backing up, and guess what he can do while he backs up? Reload, track me again, or hit me for damage. Even if I could get to his side, the thing spins. The whole traverse is fast enough that you simply cannot circle this thing, not alone and not with a heavy. Now, you might go, ah, Guido, you shouldn't be able to circle much stuff in a heavy anyway. All right, noted, but I can't even get by to flank. All right, so not a true circle where I'm just kind of zinging around him. I just simply can't get to his side. And even if I got to his side, I would still have trouble penning the ridiculous armor on this thing. So my point there is that all these little soft stats we're talking about, this horsepower, its reverse speed, its azimuth on its gun, its reload time, that goes back to the 650 alpha being slightly less, so allowing it to have better gun stats, because, you know, 100 less alpha it needs to have a big buff on gun stats, that kind of thing. All those things add up together into what we have in World of Tanks, as far as the way this tank is played as an assault TD, a ridiculous tank. I mean, absolutely ridiculous tank. It really is. Let's take a look at, where we go. There we are. No, let's not look at that. So this is tanks.gg. Look at this armor layout. 339 effective, 257. Not too bad. Can get even worse, but still quite a bit of pen required to get through that thing. That's a very thin lower plate. So it is a quote-unquote weak spot, but not very weak. Look at these things. The superstructure, you're not going through any of that. Put a little angle on him. He's still at 270, 280 effective. Holy cow. And that's even flat-plated a little bit. It takes quite a bit before you even get close, but 230 anyway. So you're dabbing 2 on that bad boy to get through it in any event. And you can just see the armor layout. There's really no weak spot on the front. Yes, you might want to make an argument, but even so, at 230, 240, that is still very strong lower armor right there. Just nowhere really to shoot this thing. It's going to keep its front to you. It's going to have no problem getting its gun onto you unless it gets surrounded by more than one tank. And even getting around to the side of it is problematic for the most part as far as penning goes. So absolutely insane tank. All right, and that's basically all I got to say about the 268 V4. No, it's not. I'll just say a little bit more. I already said it, that I'm not saying it's completely unbalancing the game and destroying gameplay, but it is a broken tank. And what's interesting about World of Tanks now, with so many tanks and so many moving parts, is you can have some broken tanks intermixed in those things and it doesn't destroy gameplay. Because even though it is a very good tank, you don't jump into tier 10s and see 15 of them. Sometimes when a new tank comes out, you get some games like that early on, but pretty quickly people move on to all the various things they're doing. There's a lot of grinds, there's a lot of different tanks. There's even multiple overpowered tanks at any one time that people are sort of spread around and using at different tiers as well. So you don't get the sense that, hey, that tank is ruining gameplay overall. But the fact is, it is affecting gameplay when it shows up in a match. And that's the point. It is a ridiculously overpowered tank. And because of the way World of Tanks is played, and because the soft stats, and there are so many stats in the game, there are just really minor tweaks you can make to that tank to fix it. One of them is the reverse speed. That has to go. 22 in reverse is ridiculous. I would also nerf its forward speed to something like 45 or 40. It doesn't need to do 55 or whatever that number was. That was insane. Was it 45? Anyway, I'd lose about 5 to 10 kilometers an hour on that thing. I'd definitely nerf the reverse speed on it. That needs to happen as well. So, you know, there are options out there, and they don't have to be the giant nerf hammer coming down and smashing it into oblivion to where it's not even worth playing anymore. Just small tweaks. But that's not something Wargaming's very good at. They seem to be unwilling to make small tweaks. They wait till something becomes a huge problem, and then they smash it so hard with a mallet that it never comes back, and they call it fixed. Whereas if they would just make small tweaks along the way, I think they would find they could really make people much happier that way. All right, that is enough about the 260. All right, guys, that is it. I'm about out of coffee, lots of babbling. You see I finally unlocked my 705A right there. I am a senior technical engineer once again. I have to say that's probably the 10th time, without actually exaggerating, maybe 8, but probably about the 10th time I've ended up unlocking every tank in the game once they put new stuff out. I will do a review on this at some point. I did the 705. The 705 is fantastic. When I looked at this initially, I thought it was just a pretty cool straight upgrade of the 705. But I'm going to be honest, I think the 705 is better. I just think it's better. Now, that doesn't mean if these two faced each other that the 705 would necessarily win. I'm just saying tier for tier. As far as playing the 705 and enjoying yourself, I think it's just a better tank. This one does have some upgraded stuff. A little bit more armor, especially on the turret. I think it gets to 330. But from the numbers I'm looking at, I don't think it translates that much at tier 10. But I'll have to play it. Like I said earlier, sometimes the stats don't really tell the story on how a tank plays based on the way World of Tanks is played out there in the pubs, but we'll see. All right, that is it for me on Coffee Talk, guys. Hopefully I don't have to chase my dog anymore today. I'm looking at her right now. She's laying on the bed. She's oh so tired from running around the neighborhood all day. All right, we'll see you.